Imagine waking up one day and realizing that the person staring back at you in the mirror is a stranger. Not in the literal sense. Your face is the same, your hair, your eyes, but something deeper, something insidious. There's a quiet war being waged inside your mind, and for years you've been unknowingly on the losing side. Every thought, every fleeting impulse, every judgment you make about yourself and the world has been quietly betraying you. Have you ever paused to notice how your own mind seems to conspire against you? How it convinces you to stay in patterns that hurt you, persuades you to ignore your instincts, and whispers half-truths that feel like wisdom. It promises safety, comfort, even happiness. But more often than not, it delivers anxiety, self-doubt, and a sense of smallness in a world that demands courage. You obey its guidance without question, yet it is not your ally. It is the trickster in your own house, a cunning architect of illusions you take for reality. What if everything you believe about yourself is partially manufactured by forces you cannot fully control? What if the voice in your head, the one you trust implicitly, is biased, distorted, and shaped by a lifetime of unexamined fears, inherited traumas, and societal conditioning? Think about the last time you acted against your better judgment, gave in to self-sabotage, or felt paralyzed by indecision. Was it truly your choice, or was it your mind, quietly steering you into the same patterns over and over again? This is not a question of intelligence. Your mind betrays both the brilliant and the ordinary alike. Nietzsche warned that humans often live under the illusion of freedom while enslaved by their own instincts, their desires, and the subtle forces of culture. Jung called it the shadow, the part of yourself you refuse to acknowledge, yet that shapes your thoughts and actions from behind the scenes. Even Schopenhauer recognized the mind's cruel tendency to desire endlessly, knowing full well that desire itself is the source of suffering. And yet, most people walk through life blind to this treachery. They trust their thoughts as if they were sacred scripture, never pausing to ask whether these inner narratives serve them or imprison them. How many decisions, small or monumental, have been dictated by fears you inherited but never examined? How many dreams have been abandoned because your mind whispered lies about inadequacy, impossibility, or risk? Consider the paradox. Your mind is both your most intimate companion and your most persistent saboteur. It is the tool through which you experience reality, yet it is also the lens that distorts it. How can you trust the very instrument that continuously undermines you? How can you navigate a world of complexities and choices when the organ designed to guide you is itself imperfect, biased, and mercilessly clever? By now, you might feel a creeping unease, a subtle dread that the life you've been living is not entirely your own. That sense is not accidental. It is a necessary tremor, a signal that beneath the surface of your thoughts lies a force that needs to be confronted, understood, and perhaps mastered. The question is not whether your mind betrays you, it does. The question is how, why, and whether you are willing to see it clearly. Because only when you expose the hidden betrayals of your own psyche can the journey toward true understanding begin. And it is here, in this tension between trust and betrayal, that we step into the hidden labyrinth of the mind, where nothing is as safe, familiar, or predictable as it seems. The betrayal of your mind is not accidental. It is rooted in layers of unseen architecture, a structure built over decades, centuries, and millennia. To understand it, you must first recognize that your thoughts are not purely yours. They are shaped, warped, and constrained by forces you barely notice. Your upbringing, the culture you inhabit, the stories society whispers in your ear from birth. Each of these is like a brick in a wall you did not choose to build, yet one that shapes the corridors of your consciousness. Carl Jung spoke of the shadow, the reservoir of instincts, fears, and desires we refuse to acknowledge. It is not evil in a moral sense. It is merely unintegrated. And yet, it dictates much of our behavior, often in ways we interpret as external misfortune. When you lash out, when you procrastinate, when you feel inexplicably restless or dissatisfied, it is not always circumstance that is to blame. Often it is the shadow, those aspects of yourself you deny, pushing against your carefully constructed self-image. You live thinking you are the master of your own fate, but in truth, parts of you operate as a hidden engine of self-sabotage. Friedrich Nietzsche provides another lens. He described humans as creatures of contradiction, driven simultaneously by will to power and instinctive impulses we refuse to own. Nietzsche's warning was subtle but urgent. The mind is a battlefield of competing forces, and our illusions of rationality or moral superiority often conceal the most dangerous forms of self-deception. We deceive ourselves in the name of virtue, in the pursuit of comfort, and even under the guise of self-improvement. Each act of rationalization, each internal compromise, strengthens the patterns that betray us. Schopenhauer went further, identifying desire as the root of suffering. Your mind is constantly projecting you forward, urging you toward wants you cannot ultimately satisfy. It whispers that fulfillment exists just beyond the next goal, the next success, the next relationship. And in this endless pursuit, it erodes your present awareness. Happiness is always deferred because the mind cannot rest. It is perpetually at war with the very being it inhabits. Aldous Huxley, in his reflections on society and consciousness, warned that modern humans are not just constrained by their internal conflicts, but by the external pressures of a culture engineered to distract, pacify, and control. Your mind absorbs these pressures effortlessly, creating a constant feedback loop of anxiety, fear, and longing. Advertising, social media, and the relentless noise of modern life condition your thoughts to serve external agendas, turning your mind into both battleground and puppet stage. Jean-Paul Sartre adds another dimension. The mind's betrayal is inseparable from freedom. We are condemned to be free, he said, and yet we fear the weight of that freedom. Your mind, in subtle ways, shields you from the terrifying responsibility of creating your own values and making authentic choices. It convinces you that conformity is safety, that certainty is necessary, that obedience to external norms is preferable to the chaos of true self-direction. And so, it betrays you by seducing you into illusion, wrapping restraint in comfort, and calling limitation wisdom. Even Viktor Frankl, who faced the extremities of human suffering, observed that the mind can imprison itself without walls. In concentration camps, people were stripped of every external freedom, yet some maintained internal freedom. Others collapsed under the tyranny of their own despair. This demonstrates a chilling truth. Betrayal is not always imposed from outside. Often, it is cultivated from within, by the very organ that should guide, protect, and illuminate. These thinkers converge on a central insight. Your mind betrays you because it is a complex, evolved instrument, finely tuned for survival rather than truth. It has been conditioned to protect you, to avoid pain, to seek immediate gratification, to defer responsibility. But survival is not the same as flourishing. The mechanisms that once ensured your physical safety now silently manipulate your emotions, distort your reasoning, and hijack your perception of reality. Consider your daily life. The anxiety that spikes when you scroll social media, the obsessive replay of past mistakes, the relentless inner critic, the sudden urge to avoid uncomfortable truths. Each is a symptom of a mind operating under hidden directives, directives you did not consciously choose, yet obey as if they were your own. The betrayal is quiet, invisible, and total. And yet, this hidden problem is also a paradox. It is simultaneously the source of your suffering and the gateway to your liberation. By seeing the patterns, by tracing the origins of your inner distortions, you can begin to reclaim authority over the very instrument that has so long deceived you. But first, you must confront the consequences of living under this unseen tyranny, for the cost of ignorance is far greater than you may realize. You may think that the betrayals of your mind are minor, slips in judgment, fleeting anxiety, or moments of indecision. But these small fissures, unnoticed and unexamined, accumulate over time like hidden cracks in a foundation. They shape the very structure of your life, your relationships, your decisions, and even your sense of self. The consequences are subtle, insidious, and often invisible until they reach a point of undeniable impact. Consider how your thoughts construct reality. Cognitive science reveals that perception is not a mirror of the world, but a projection shaped by expectation, bias, and prior experience. Your mind filters every interaction, every piece of information, through lenses you didn't fully choose. Confirmation bias ensures that you notice only what aligns with your preconceptions. The negativity bias makes losses and fears weigh heavier than gains and joys. The availability heuristic convinces you that rare catastrophes are imminent threats. And so, the world you inhabit, the life you believe is objectively unfolding, is partly a product of a mind that is quietly steering you toward anxiety, conflict, and limitation. This is not merely an intellectual abstraction. Your daily life is riddled with consequences of this hidden manipulation. The hesitation that stops you from speaking your truth at work. The compulsive scrolling that steals hours of your attention and leaves you hollow. The replaying of old wounds that poisons current relationships. Every missed opportunity, every regret, every internal argument is a footprint of the mind's quiet betrayal. And because these influences are largely invisible, you blame circumstances, other people, or yourself, never recognizing the true architect of your suffering. On a societal level, the stakes are even higher. Mass culture, shaped by algorithms and media, exploits these natural tendencies of the human mind. Huxley foresaw a world where distraction, pleasure, and constant stimulation would act as anesthetics, keeping populations compliant, while minds are quietly corralled into patterns that reinforce consumerism, conformity, and superficiality. Consider how political polarization, viral outrage, and addictive entertainment thrive not because people are inherently shallow, but because the mind, evolved to seek novelty, confirmation, and status, is perfectly susceptible to manipulation. Your own inner betrayals make you an unwitting participant in these larger societal illusions. Even more intimate is the effect on identity. Jung warned that ignoring the shadow creates a split within the self. One part of you performs the role expected by society or conscious self-image, while another churns unseen beneath the surface. This invisible faction of desires, fears, and impulses often sabotages your best intentions. You may strive to be rational, kind, or disciplined, yet find yourself acting in ways that feel foreign. You may blame circumstances or character flaws, never realizing that these misalignments are the consequence of neglecting the hidden aspects of your own psyche. Your relationships suffer as well. The unexamined mind projects its fears, insecurities, and unresolved conflicts onto others. Minor irritations become arguments. Small disappointments become crises. Empathy is often limited by the distorted lens of your own mental narrative, which interprets the world through filters of past trauma, cultural conditioning, and personal bias. And the tragedy is that these projections are invisible. You do not see the mind's manipulation until it has already left scars. Perhaps most alarming is the compounding effect over a lifetime. Patterns of thought, repeated thousands of times a day, calcify into habits. Habits become decisions. Decisions shape destiny. You may not notice the erosion of potential, the quiet squandering of creativity, the habitual surrender to fear and avoidance. But each day, the mind's betrayal exacts its toll. Years later, you awaken to a life that feels off or unfulfilled, yet the true culprit, the unseen, unchallenged workings of your own mind, remains largely hidden. And here lies the tension. The very organ that has betrayed you is also the only instrument through which liberation is possible. If you remain unconscious of these processes, they will continue to shape you silently, perpetuating cycles of anxiety, self-doubt, and passive conformity. But if you learn to observe, to confront, and to redirect these internal forces, the consequences can shift from silent destruction to conscious creation. The stakes are enormous. Your mental patterns are not just ephemeral, they are the architects of your reality. In the quiet moments, when the world is still and the mind hums in the background, you may feel the stirrings of this realization. That subtle unease, that sense that something is off, is the first tremor of awareness, a signal that the hidden consequences of your mind's betrayal are ready to be confronted. But awareness alone is not enough. Understanding the betrayal and recognizing its consequences only prepares you for the next stage, rebellion. For true liberation lies in learning to act against the very forces that have long dictated your thoughts, emotions, and life. What if everything you believed about control, freedom, and your own mind was a carefully constructed illusion? The betrayal of the mind is not merely an obstacle, it is a challenge, a call to arms. To remain passive is to surrender, to awaken is to rebel. Liberation is not a gentle process. It demands courage, clarity, and a willingness to confront the very parts of yourself you have long denied. The first step in this rebellion is recognition. You must see the patterns for what they are. Not inherent truths, not immutable laws of reality, but recurring scripts written by fear, habit, and external influence. Jung suggested that integration of the shadow, the acknowledgement and acceptance of your hidden aspects, is essential. When you stop resisting your own discomfort, when you examine the impulses and desires you have long dismissed, the mind loses some of its power to deceive. Shadow work is not pleasant. It is confronting the parts of yourself that whisper lies, that sabotage, that scream when ignored. Yet it is only through this confrontation that you begin to reclaim authority over your thoughts. Nietzsche offers another radical insight. You must become the creator of your own values. The mind often betrays you by hiding behind the facade of morality, social expectation, or fear of judgment. It tells you what is safe, what is normal, what is acceptable, guiding you toward conformity. To rebel is to reject this external scripting and to actively choose your own path, to embrace responsibility for your inner life. It is terrifying because it strips away illusions of certainty. But in that fear lies the potential for profound freedom. Practical rebellion is an act of conscious intervention. Begin with the moments when the mind dictates reactions automatically, moments of anger, insecurity, procrastination, or avoidance. Pause, observe. Question, is this truly my choice? Or am I being led by fear, habit, or some unexamined narrative? This practice is deceptively simple, yet enormously powerful. By interrupting the automatic flow, you reclaim space in which conscious thought and authentic action can emerge. History offers proof that rebellion is possible. Viktor Frankl survived the unimaginable by asserting agency over his internal life when every external freedom was stripped away. The creative geniuses and philosophical radicals of every era, Nietzsche, Dostoevsky, Huxley, exercised similar inner sovereignty, refusing to let their minds be passive recipients of circumstance. They questioned, explored, and disrupted the patterns that would have otherwise constrained them. You can do the same, on a smaller scale, in the architecture of your own consciousness. Radical honesty is the next stage. You must speak truth to yourself without flinching. Examine your fears, desires, and motives without excuses. Acknowledge the small betrayals, the self-doubt that limits you, the internal critic that paralyzes, the compulsions you excuse as inevitabilities. These are not weaknesses, they are signals. They mark the areas where the mind has built secret pathways of control. Mapping them is the first step toward dismantling them. Another key is cultivating presence. The mind betrays you when it dominates your attention, dwelling on the past, anticipating the future, spinning narratives that may never occur. Practices that anchor awareness, mindfulness, meditation, journaling, or simply observing your own thoughts without judgment, allow you to reclaim space in which the mind is a tool rather than a tyrant. When you learn to watch thoughts without being swept away, you weaken their unconscious authority. Finally, embrace discomfort. The mind betrays you because it seeks comfort above truth. Growth, insight, and liberation are uncomfortable. They demand confrontation with your shadows, the unknown, and the uncertainty of self-created meaning. Each moment you resist avoidance, each choice to face fear instead of running, is a strike against the silent tyranny that has long ruled your interior world. The rebellion is not about eliminating the mind's betrayals entirely. They are an inherent part of being human, but about learning to act in spite of them. It is about reclaiming the agency that has long been surrendered and choosing to shape your life consciously, rather than letting invisible patterns dictate your destiny. When you start this rebellion, the mind begins to shift. Patterns of thought that once operated unconsciously become visible. The shadow, once terrifying and alien, becomes a source of strength. Fear transforms from prison bars into markers of the path you must take. And in this struggle, something extraordinary happens. You realize that the same mind that betrayed you can also become your most powerful ally. The next step, the final realization, is the culmination of this rebellion, a truth so profound that it reshapes everything you thought you knew about freedom, reality, and your own consciousness. But before that, you must hold this tension. The mind betrays, yet it also empowers. The journey from betrayal to sovereignty is perilous, disorienting, and intoxicating. And it is only in crossing this threshold that the ultimate revelation awaits. After all the shadowed corridors, the betrayals, the rebellions, you arrive at a quiet threshold. Here, there are no more distractions, no comforting narratives, no illusions of external salvation. The ultimate truth waits, unadorned and unavoidable. And it is terrifying in its simplicity. Your mind, in all its brilliance and treachery, is neither your master nor your enemy. It is your creation, your mirror, your canvas. For years, you believed that your thoughts were commands, that your feelings were facts, that your fears were unavoidable. And yet every betrayal, every misstep, every paralysis was a reflection of your own participation. You were both the architect and the victim. The mind that whispered lies, that reinforced patterns of limitation, that dictated false inevitabilities. It is also the mind you shape, moment by moment, choice by choice, through awareness and courage. You are not at the mercy of your thoughts. You are their sculptor. This is not an abstract metaphor. Neuroscience confirms it. The brain is malleable, constantly reshaping itself in response to attention, reflection, and action. The shadow that Jung warned you about, the compulsions that Nietzsche observed, the desires that Schopenhauer condemned, they are not immutable chains. They are currents. And while currents may be powerful, they can be navigated. You are not a passive passenger. You are the captain who learns to read the hidden tides of the mind. The paradox is exquisite. The very thing that has betrayed you also contains the power to liberate you. The mind's treacheries are not obstacles to freedom. They are markers, signposts pointing to where consciousness must awaken. Anxiety is the signpost of unexamined fear. Self-doubt is the signpost of unmet shadow. Desire is the signpost of unconscious patterns. To confront these betrayals is not merely to resist suffering. It is to uncover the raw material of transformation. Imagine seeing your mind fully, without illusion. Every thought, every bias, every fear, every craving is laid bare. And then, imagine responding not with shame, not with judgment, but with conscious choice. The critic becomes a guide, the fear becomes a compass, the shadow becomes a reservoir of creativity. The rebellion is complete, not because the mind has stopped betraying you, it never will, but because you have learned to see, understand, and act despite it. And here lies the cinematic revelation. Freedom does not mean the absence of chaos. It does not mean the mind becomes serene, perfectly rational, or entirely trustworthy. True freedom is the courage to engage fully with the mind, to hold the tension between betrayal and mastery, to navigate the labyrinth of thought and feeling without surrender. You are not the victim of your mind. You are its conscious steward. Every choice, every act of awareness is a reclaiming of sovereignty. This insight reframes everything. The disappointments, the regrets, the fears that once felt like permanent marks of inadequacy. Now they are teachers, allies, evidence of pathways towards self-mastery. The life that once felt predetermined by circumstance, heredity, or inner weakness is now a landscape of possibility. Each thought is a brushstroke. Each moment of conscious attention is a chisel shaping reality. And so, the haunting beauty of this truth. The mind is both the betrayer and the liberator, the prison and the key. You have lived under its deception, yet now you know that the same instrument that has confined you can also be the tool of your transcendence. Awareness is your rebellion, reflection is your power, and courage is the lever with which you reshape the terrain of your own consciousness. As you step forward carrying this knowledge, the world appears differently. You notice the currents of thought, the subtleties of bias, the shadows in yourself and in others. Yet instead of despair, there is awe. Instead of passivity, there is engagement. Instead of fear, there is responsibility, an exhilarating, almost dizzying responsibility for your own reality. The ultimate realization is this: the mind has betrayed you every day, and yet, paradoxically, it has also been preparing you for freedom. To see clearly is to begin wielding the power you already possess. To live consciously is to transform the betrayals into mastery, the shadows into allies, and the chaos into a life forged deliberately, courageously, and without illusion. And in that moment, when the mind is fully acknowledged, fully understood, and fully wielded, you step into a strange, terrifying, and magnificent liberation. The realization that you have always carried both the problem and the solution within yourself.